I can remember the first time I sat down, we were coming in a place where they had been hurt, gone through season, and we had zero desire because we wanted to do the session for the rest of the time. We loved the home experience. It was amazing what God was doing there. But in this moment, God opened the door for us to come in and help. And I remember, in our prayer time before we said yes to this, we really, and Morgan and I both felt God to say, I need you to be foster parents. And think about a foster parent. When you take that child in, you are not going to keep that child. It's not in your job description. You are taking that child in who's been hurt, invalidated, and just loving on them in the interim until their adoptive parents take them. So when we came in, that was our heart. And I remember sitting down with the spiritual leaders here the first time and just really telling them who we are and what we believed and all the things. And I'd kind of put some things off to the side because in that moment I was going to try to sell myself. And it was funny in that conversation, I kind of saw it as a box mentality. I had all these boxes and I'm going to leave these off. We'll talk about that later. And just in the flow of the conversation, slowly everything began to get moved over. Nope, talk about this. Hey, you asked this. I'm going to answer this. And by the end of that conversation, I looked them in the face and I said, okay, I've told you everything. There is nothing about me that you don't know. And if you don't feel the same way about me when you did when I walk in, when I walk out, you can shoot me a text, give me a call and say, I don't think this is going to work. And they looked me in the face and said, no, you're exactly what we need. So from day one, I didn't come in here trying to sell myself. I didn't realize we were going to be here any amount of time. We've now been here going on our 6th year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No, 5th year.
Yeah.
But coming in here, it was an interim position. I didn't know what existed beyond that. I just knew I wanted to be excellent in the season I was in. And in that moment, I wasn't selling myself. I was positioning these people in front of me to be ready for whatever lies ahead, whether it was a new pastor, whether it was the job the next day at work, whether it was their family. My job was to come in and reposture this group of people to make a difference in the world around them, regardless of what was next. Little did I know I was the next.
Yeah.
And it took 6 months from that point till then when God said, finally, okay, now you can put yourself in this. But because you spent 6 months not selling yourself, they were sold. Like I remember when I finally put my name in, they were all like, what took you so long? And my resume was not up to snuff with half the people they had 200 resumes. My resume was the first one I ever wrote because I joined the Navy straight out of high school.
I remember that.
And I asked them after the fact, how was my resume? And they said it was not good. So my resume was not good compared to anybody else. That would have put me way down the list. I came in and I was Pentecostal background in a church that had Baptist background. So that if I'd have put my name in amongst all of them, that would have pushed me on the list. So if I never would have had this moment of not selling myself and just coming to connection, relationship, and community with these people, I wouldn't have got this position. But it was in a moment that was orchestrated by God to come in and just live life with people, to speak into them, to challenge them and exhort and encourage and edify them, that when we got to that place, I didn't have to sell myself. I didn't need a resume to prove it. I didn't need 3 sermons to show how good of a preacher I was. There was a connection that was bigger than both of us. And in that space, that was what we moved forward with.
Man, I feel like this is so paralleled in that like quick win. I just started a new business, hire me. This is happening where people are establishing themselves rather than them being given something to have a space to be established. And I understand like you're building your own platform, you might be starting something new. That's great. But are you willing to wait? And are you willing to be like really stripped down and to serve? And that's what you guys did. In the context of entrepreneurship, you did it beautifully without knowing that you were doing it. Even as a bystander watching it, I knew that there was a lot of undoing happening, a lot which happened in the home church, but then you went back into it and you had to strip your mind of what you expected this to be or how easy it was going to be because it was just going to be a short period of time. And so for those who are listening from this lens where like you're not necessarily a pastor and you're not building that lens of ministry as a marketplace minister, are you willing to put the work in and truly serve a community and to show up to find out what they need? What are their needs? Are you willing to like, let me let me just say this. I have a friend who was literally a part of my business for 3 years, and he was a part of Founder Collective, part of FounderCon before we shifted the name. And he, after 3 years of knowing me, didn't know my resume, didn't know my backstory. And yet he still showed up, still showed up. And this is where good deeds are so critical, where you actually not trying to do it for a face or a facade or an accolade or a title, but out of a place of a servant leader will really do you well. And I think it's really important for people to know your historical path. And because that gives them context to who you are, why you are, where you came from. And whether that is a good lens or a bad lens, like my sharing the hard parts of my past have been validation points for my community to trust me more than my fancy accolades or stage moments.
Yeah. And I think that's getting to the business side. What does the mobilized church look like? It's not going into your business and holding Bible study, worship nights. Those are good.
Yeah, it might
be. Happen.
Yeah.
But it is really edifying, encouraging, exhorting your workers, helping them succeed in life, helping change the culture of their life and speaking life and bringing in those places. Because when you change the atmosphere, you open a door for them to know your why. Because your why is Jesus. It is you're connected to this other thing. If you walk in with Scripture Jesus first, they'll never see your fruit, because most people are turned off to that name because they've been wounded by it. Most people are turned off to that name because they've got a broken model and a broken identity of what that is based on what the world tells you. But when you walk in and just do it differently, when you're walking, you're not trying to sell yourself. When you walk in and create a product and you want to do everything you can for it to be the best possible, for you to be the best possible, if you do everything you can to serve those around you, that's when you open a door for somebody to say, you stand out as different from everything I've experienced. Why? That's when people start selling you, like, you need to go to this business and get this because they do it differently. It's just a shift from where we've been. When the genuine walks in the room, the counterfeit will reveal itself.
I was going to go right back to what we said at the beginning from the Sadducees and the Pharisees. It's like people trying to be perfect versus people trying to be excellent.
I just watched the episode of Chosen where Jesus challenged a mindset with the Pharisees at one point. And when I heard it, I said to Morgan, I said, it's amazing how many people would say that they're siding with Jesus in this, and they would fail to see that they're on the other side of the table. Because we've become so closed off to anything other than this Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night experience, the box church of what it's become. This is the Scripture. This is the truth. This is the law. And they couldn't see Jesus say, but what if?
Yeah.
And they couldn't be challenged beyond it. Even the Chosen, there's so many Christians who are up in arms and against this.
Right.
Guess what? The Chosen is not the first of its kind. Go check Jesus's parables. All the Sadducees and Pharisees came against Jesus. Why aren't you speaking the law? I am. You just can't hear it through the lens I'm giving it to you.
That's so good.
That's what the Chosen is. It's just a remake of the parables of Jesus. Jesus was pulling parables out, stories out that weren't in the law, but the heart of it was there. It
goes back to offense, right? 100%. And that's what you and I have talked about, the bait of Satan in John Bevere's book. And it really is that people are offended. The Pharisees were offended by Jesus. The Sadducees were offended by Jesus. And if we stay in that space, then the three things that you said in regards to edifying, exhorting, and encouraging are literally the stark opposite. So if we're talking about a pendulum of how to do this thing and to do it in excellence versus perfection, I really think that that's the thing. Like, failure to complete is trying to be perfect and it end up needing to fix it into your own way. Now you've turned perfection into manipulation, and manipulation is going to end up being rooted in sin because of your desire to pride, ego, lust, all the things enter into that space. I can say it so candidly because I've been there. And so operating under that different understanding of how do we do church in excellence is a very different conversation, and something I feel like we've navigated as a family really beautifully over the course of the last, 7 years since we've known, 8 years since we've known each other. And we're still learning. Like, we're always still learning. How do we do this better? How do we, blanket and cover the people who do have church and hurt in this regard? And we're doing it right now because I think another E word in that would be education. And to educate people. And that's the equipping piece of what the church is also responsible for. And we as marketplace ministers are responsible for. We have to educate people, and education should be happening way more than selling. So if I can educate you, then I don't have to sell myself at all, because you're like, wow, I need to know more about this Jesus. I need to know more about this church that allows people to stand up and talk on the microphone and share a testimony in the middle of the service. That's what Anthony's, like, literally their service does. It's not planned, and yet the Lord's plan gets revealed every single time, and it's so beautiful. So that's what we do and how we do it, connected to the Founder Collective. And hopefully we're honoring, that's the whole point, is to honor God in our excellence and to show up and let him move, create that space for him to move. That's what the church should be.